to introduce Claire. So, everybody, I would love to introduce Carlo Iaconov, who has joined us. I'm sure I've said that wrong, Carlo. I'm sorry. From the UK, managed to get a flight in, has spent 2 weeks in quarantine in Darwin, and only to come to Wagga for an unseasonably cold November. Carlo joins us as the Executive Director for the Division of Library Services, and we welcome Carlo. I know you'd all be wondering, who's Carlo? So welcome, Carlo.
I would also like to refer to Friday, to the panel session on Friday, where Carlo will be one of our panel members. So if you want to hear a little bit more, you can join that session.
Perfect. Right. Over to you, Denise. I will stop interrupting and welcome her.
No, that's all good. Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, Carlo, as well, and welcome today. It was lovely to see your face on here. Without any further ado, because I know that we're moving into the next session, I would like to introduce to you Professor Claire Macken, who has been wonderfully interesting to talk to as I've been preparing the conference. We've had some great conversations, and I'm sure many of you have seen her in some of the things that have been on recently for TEXA and the Needed Now conference. But I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Claire as our first keynote speaker. Claire is the Associate Deputy Vice Chancellor, Learning and Teaching in the College of Laws at RMIT. She's held many roles in higher education and contributed to many forums as a leader and as an award-winning teacher. So I think she's well placed to inspire and excite us this morning. I know that her keynote will set the scene for today's focus of co-creation and for the scene for the rest of the conference. Thank you, Claire, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Denise, and it's great to be here. Hi, everyone. I think I hopefully have some things to share today. I'd encourage you to use the chat, though. I love it. I love it when you chat and, you know, put in your views and challenge and have your say. So please use the chat. And at the end, I think we've got time for some questions. So I'm not going to just sit here and talk at you for a whole hour. That'll be super boring. So I'm going to share some slides. Let me bring them up. Here we go. I'm not going to do the full screen because I like to be able to see things as I go. So I'm going to bring up your little chat box over here. Awesome. So today I'd love to talk about connected in a disrupted world, strategies for engagement in learning between learners, teachers and industry. And I hope I touch on some things that are super relevant for you. I know that they're very relevant for us at RMIT at the moment. And before I start, though, I'd love to acknowledge the people of the Wurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university. And I'm actually at home today, although we are allowed back, we're still wearing masks in the office. I'm also on the same land as the university. So we would like to respectfully acknowledge the ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. So I don't know about you, but 2021 is not the year I expected to have. I thought 2020 would be the end of the whole COVID experience and it would sort of get back to being a bit normal. And, you know, I know that we went through a lot of shocks by going fully online. I think the TEXA series I hosted was mentioned. That was amazing fun to hear around not just Australia, but further about people's experiences of just suddenly changing to a new mode of learning. And it was a real shock. I think it was for me, even though I've spent a lot of time in online education. And I think that higher education is in the process of reinventing itself, and as it should. I think it's exciting. It was great to hear from your Vice Chancellor just the end of the discussion around collaboration. I think super important. And I think that as higher education has really changed this last 2 years, it always has, and there's a lot of history around the changing nature of higher education and their ability to adapt to what society needs. I think, in fact, higher education has got a pretty bad and unfair reputation, and it's sort of seen as this big sort of slow, slumbering beast that doesn't actually move very fast, but it's really not. I mean, higher education is very agile. It is able to change when things change, and I think that some of the lessons that we've learned through the last few years you know, are things that have been already started way before that, and that we've adapted some from fantastic new approaches. And we were starting to reimagine lots of things around the whole sector. And I think that, you know, I am super optimistic about higher education. I think that we have a really privileged place in terms of our role as educators, and that we can't forget the learner at the centre. And today I'm going to talk about the learner at the centre a lot. I think that that's super important. And I think, though, if you take a big step back, what's happening around the sector is that there's about 8 big areas that higher education, tertiary education institutions are really looking at. There's a whole lot of conversation around new ways to recognise learning, like micro-credentials, disaggregation of degree programs, interdisciplinarity. So really thinking about what is the degree structure, how are students coming into higher education, and things like recognition of prior learning and so on. We're definitely becoming globalised, and you know, it's an interesting concept that when you're trapped in your country, and international students are not coming into the country as they used to, that we're not, you know, thinking about globalisation. But I think in some ways we've actually extended globalisation through digital, and there's been exciting things in that space. Other ones, I'm not going to go through all of them, but things like analytics. There's a lot of back-end work in higher education at the moment. And prior to this role, I was actually a consultant at KPMG for 1 year, which taught me a lot. Taught me I didn't want to be a consultant. But it also really showed me that the infrastructure of universities from that operational point of view, so things like Workday and implementing changes, how that technology fits in, and a lot of unis are talking about that at the moment. The big ones, though, is there's a huge amount of physical and virtual campus redesign happening in the sector. And, you know, there was an acceleration of the online space through COVID, but there's also this amazing campus experience, and then concepts like blended learning, which I'll talk about a little bit shortly. And, you know, industry, I think, is something that we're all interested in. So it's a big differentiator. I think it's something that you're potentially thinking about as well. And it's really interesting because industry is coming at education from a completely different perspective from an educator. And again, I spent 5 years in Apple and looking into higher education and looking at, you know, how you go to market and think about the relationship with universities from that perspective. And I think we can learn a lot from industry, but we shouldn't totally abrogate our entire responsibility as educators to what industry wants. So that's probably controversial. Hopefully you can have some different views on those topics. Just related to that is I'm a really strong view that students are not customers, and this is a massive trend in the sector at the moment. I don't know if you're seeing it everywhere, but I am. And there's big reports how we have to think about CX, UX, whatever X. We have to treat the student as a customer of the university, so that, you know, things like teaching scores, that's one of the only indicators. How satisfied are they? You know, it's a really interesting concept because to me, it's a completely different relationship. And my background is as a lawyer, and I spent a lot of time in law, doing a PhD in law. And in terms of the law itself, the relationship between a student and the university is one that is governed by the Australian consumer law. But we can't, we have some consumer-like responsibilities to students, but when it comes to education, that is completely different. And we can't be distracted by having a customer satisfaction as a proxy for quality in education, in my view. We can't just treat a student as a customer, because the point of higher education is transformative. The transaction by which a student pays fees for services in terms of education, for an exchange of money. It's not exchange of money for a degree. They have to work for it. You have to change. You have to actually get uncomfortable. You have to think differently. And we are trusted through certification with those standards to meet those standards as determined usually by assessment. And they're not purchasing a qualification. They're actually engaging in education. And I think this is going to be really interesting. I'd love your views on this, please. I've had a lot of interesting comments in relation to this. And, you know, I think that we have to, though, put learners at the centre. That is absolutely key. We have to have a responsibility to learners from the moment they start to engage with us to the moment that they leave and beyond. So they should be and must be accorded a high quality education. There's no doubt to that. And universities have to live up to those promises that we make to students through our culture, through our choice of technology, the way that we use data, the design of organisational structures, the design of their curriculum. And we must embrace student-centred learning because that's our job. We're here to help learners, and learner centricity is absolutely 100% key. And this also puts obligations on learners to be active participants. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been sitting in a couple of forums like this, and the cameras are all off, or magically there's just been a wave of broken cameras across Australia. It's unbelievable, the number of broken cameras on laptops. It's just extraordinary. And there's just, you call on someone, you say, what do you think? Dead silence. It's so hard in these online environments to engage with learners. And I just hear it across the whole sector as I think people are tired. I think it's been super hard, but learners have to engage in their education. That's absolutely critical. It doesn't matter how much we tell them, how much we give them, they have to come to the table as well. So I think that this active learning concept is super important, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So today I think we also have to think about things like what is actually motivating our students to come to university, to higher education or tertiary education generally. And we actually know a lot. So here's a study we did of different learners, all learners, not just on campus. This is online learners, this is like people from industry, a whole lot. And we know that learners are different, that not every learner is here for the same outcome. And I love this because, there's different sort of types of people that are all looking at education from a different perspective. And we know that, some learners are here to walk their own path. Some want to try lots of new things and get involved in everything. Some are just like, I'm doing this for a specific reason in terms of my career, in terms of future-proofing myself. And I think we need to tap into those. We also did some fantastic research on the what actually learners expect of university study. This should not be a surprise to you. I'm sure you know all of this already, but they would like to be treated with respect and support. And they would like the university to be easy to deal with and to be treated as an equal and respectful of their time. The next sort of big block is knowledge and mindset. So they would like to obtain knowledge and life skills, which is it's not surprising. Some learners, a lot of learners are looking for a career focus or looking towards their future and what education can do for them. They need direction, they want guidance and inspiration, and they want validation of choices. And learners would like to have engagement with people and new experiences. So we would like to make friends. And I think that, in terms of, there's some wonderful guidelines from the University of Queensland Health study, and I'm just going to bring those up, which is, I love this piece of work because learning is really tricky. And this, when you look back at that customer sort of view, this is not going to align with that at all, because learning is becoming, it's contextual, it's emotional, it's interactive, it's learning how to actually learn. So how do I actually learn something? What is the learning challenge, and what is deep and meaningful learning, and that partnership between learners and teachers and educators. So that transformative point of higher education. In terms of, belonging, I love this concept of belonging. I think that learners psychologically need a sense of belonging. So it's a human need that we have to belong. And it's an experience described as an experience of feeling that they are all likely to be accepted and respected as a valued contributor in that specific environment. And you can think online and in terms of campus-based learning, belonging is something that's so critical that we set the environment that we want to have for people to feel that they can be part of something. And it's quite interesting. I've been a university student lately, so I enrolled in a degree, not at my own uni, another uni. And it's interesting. So I'm pretty sophisticated in terms of uni. So I do understand the university system. You know, I've been in unis a long time. I've done 7 degrees. So I know it. But even, you know, as I'm walking in, I'm feeling so nervous. I'm like, am I going to fit in here? Like, what's expected of, this is me. Like, I've got high capital in this space. And you just think of maybe like an 18-year-old coming from school or a different background. You know, it is our obligation to make this as easy and absolutely welcoming as possible, that we bring them in and say, here's where you need to go, and don't be afraid, you can do this. I think that motivation to learn is absolutely, you know, if they've turned up, that's a huge benefit. And we know from the retention literature that students drop out because they couldn't make it to their first classroom, and that includes online, I would say, and they didn't make a friend in their first few weeks. So that's why they leave, is one of the, you know, 8 indicators of retention. So I think belonging is super important, and just, you know, always put yourself in the shoes of those students coming in. What are they facing? How brave have they been to get to this point? And what can we do to make it a really easy experience? And I'll tell you, unis are so complex. Like, just enroll in the online environment, you know, on this LMS. So I know lots about LMSs. I've got a lot of capital too in that space. But I'm there thinking, do I click on that? Like, I don't understand. Where do I go? So I think putting yourself in the shoes of the student all the time. I'm just going to look at your comments quickly. Yes, I encourage students to find study buddies, and a lot of humour in building that study buddy place. If you can just get a student talking to another student, you've done a good job, because that will get them coming back all the time. Are you a sage on the stage or a guide on site? Love it, Sam. Thank you. I totally love these. Fantastic. Yeah, having learners at the centres was our focus 15 years ago, Lincoln. It's so nice to see a return to that priority. It has to be. Absolutely, we have to. I'm just going to talk a little bit more around industry and things. So things like skills in the curriculum. I think we do have an obligation to teach skills. And it's interesting, this whole mix in curriculum. I could do a whole 4 hours just curriculum discussion, because I think that's so important. But, you know, this discipline-based knowledge and the skills that students need, we don't know the sets of future skills yet, but we do know some of these fundamental ones. And I think that things like communication and collaboration, your Vice-Chancellor just mentioned that about 5 times in the few minutes I was in. And these are the skills that we know that students will need for the rest of their lives. And how can we actually foster these in the curriculum? And just want to talk a little bit about industry, because industry is interesting. I think we should co-design with industry, and we just did this. So I've just had a huge year. We actually changed our entire curriculum base, a whole program, suite and architecture, from the existing what's called bracketed discipline-specific degrees in business. We've created a single Bachelor of Business with majors and minors. And so in doing so, we've run a model, pedagogical model, which I'll show you in a sec, but we did engage a lot with industry. And this is some of the people that we engaged with industry through these Voice of Industry sessions. And it's really interesting. We had over 70 of our course coordinators. Courses for us is subjects, by the way. And we used the industry partners to validate what we're doing. So they're not in control. I just want to emphasise, they are not in control. They're there to say, yeah, that works, that doesn't work. We got industry insight in that, in, say, a marketing major, we should always pair it with data analytics. As I said, we'll never actually employ someone who doesn't have data analytics with marketing. So we were using it for that sort of thing. Obviously for work integrated learning, and we use videos, case studies from some of our industry partners so they could explain, well, this is how it applies in real life. And obviously they'll be in our teaching environment as well. We have some very strong launch partners that were actually integrated right across the curriculum. So it's really important. I think the industry-university connection is super important. But so just industry is, sometimes driven through philanthropy and wanting to, better society. And sometimes they're driven through their profit and loss. And I don't know if sometimes when I was in industry and I go into unis, I just used to think that, you know, we are here because at the end of the day, there is someone who wants to sell you something like that. You know, when you strip it all away, there is that sort of thinking, oh, we'll have some sort of benefit to the industry partner as well. And I think we need to think about that mutual benefit. What's in it for them? What's in it for us? And if, you know, in skills, something like a big tech company, I'm not talking about Apple where I was, but at other, you know, it might be that they're trying to get students to use their particular product, because then over the course of that student's life, they'll keep going back to that product because that's what they were trained on. That's not our job. That is not our job as educators. It is to show them technology, but we need to skill them up for a future where they can adapt to any technology. They can use Zoom, they can use Teams, they can use all the different ones because they've got that basic digital literacy. The other thing that I'm really proud of in the degree that we've just finished is we've created an e-portfolio. And I just love this because I've been wanting to do it for so many years. I love it because it's helping us work out what are the parts of the curriculum that will become the story that the student tells about their experience at university. And it's a place that we can have students reflect on their program learning outcomes. We took this idea from a wonderful curriculum model from Northeastern. And this model is a self-integrated, self-authored integrated learning. We had the privilege of having the creator of this program come and talk to us, Sigdam Taugar. And what they do at SAIL is it's extracurricular and curricular, where they wrap around intellectual agility, global mindset, social consciousness, personal and professional effectiveness and well-being. It's actually got an app, so I sort of put it here, it's a bit small. But you can sort of see that students do a little bit of a diagnostic when they come in. And so if they're not, you know, not so great on one of them because they've never done that before, there's a whole lot of activities that are suggested from the university and in curriculum that will help them document their learning in these particular areas. And I just, you know, it's very, you know, the sort of college experience in the US as a holistic experience, but thinking about things like learning to learn, financial literacy and negotiation and networking and self-care and self-control, and things like digital skills or intellectual agility like strategic thinking. I think it's a really interesting model, and we haven't gone this far yet, but I think it's such an interesting way to think about higher education. I like it a lot, that one. Just going to talk about the lecture. So I'm just going to check your comments, and nice to see some posts in there. Yes, key to belonging is a focus on inclusive learning. Totally agree. Absolutely, you have to design for inclusivity. Every single aspect of your learning environment should be inclusive. So it's not just an add-on, it's actually embedded in from the beginning. So, you know, the lecture's really interesting. Bit of debate in Campus Morning Mail at the moment. I'm so tempted to write a piece to get in on it, because it's sort of what's happened, I think. It's so like we're getting rid of the lecture, therefore we're getting rid of teacher-student engagement. Like, no, that is not what you would want. That's crazy. Or worse, like we're getting rid of the lecture, so we're just going to replace it with technology, which is also equally crazy. We need educators. This is just crazy. What I think we've got rid of lectures because we wanted to say we want to go to active learning, which is a different concept. So I think we need to really talk around, you know, what is the concept of, I think the lecture, let's forget that term. We know what works with learning. Like that's just absolutely evidence in terms of the literature. And we know that when we record hours of someone speaking, and I am hyper aware that I am doing this right now, and I'm trying to look at you and look at the chat as well. And in a minute, we're going to have a chat. But I reckon, you know, about 30 minutes is enough. By then, you're going to, if you haven't already, some of you have already gone to emails and, you know, done your text or whatever's happening. That's just human nature. And we know that students consume lectures at 1.5 to 2 times the speed, normal speed, or faster. If it is actually possible to go faster, they will. Why are they doing this? They are looking for assessment information. We know that. Some of them are using it to actually learn, so they hear it again and again. But we know that active learning is the way that learners learn, and this is sort of an old slide, it's a pretty crappy one really, isn't it? But I just think, you know, we know that students learn by being actively engaged in the learning process. And active learning is a pedagogy that can be applied for fully online, for blended learning. And I'm a big believer in Anderson's interactive pedagogy, which talks about that interaction between learners, teachers and content. And, you know, blended learning is sort of everywhere at the moment. So it's been going forever. I was involved in it like 10 years ago as well. But if you think about it, you know, fully online, and I've been involved in fully online for a very long time as well, that's just where everything is online. We have all your engagement online. COVID just accelerated it, great and bad examples of it. So these sort of models like interactive pedagogies, you know, you have to make some decisions about when you want learners to come together with each other and a facilitator or teacher educator, and when you want them to learn in a fully online environment by themselves or with others. And you have to really construct this. And I think that we're sort of missing in higher education this obligation on students to be involved in their learning. And that's going back to this whole customer mentality. We have to have students engaged in learning. And when you've got your camera off and it's all magically broken and you can't speak, and you know, that's not active engagement in learning. That's just you sitting there like, you know, absorbing information. That doesn't actually, from all the evidence, help you to learn. So in terms of interactive pedagogy, I think we need to think about how do learners engage with educators? So learning activities and assignments, and seminar, workshop, and shoots, in blogs, in forums, in the discussion forums on your LMS, in role plays, in investigations, in fieldwork, surveys, formative assessments. There's lots of different ways that the learners will engage with teachers. And I think that's one thing we need to construct in learning. I think we also need to think about, sorry, I didn't put that slide up, but that's what I've just said, this learner-learner interaction. And I think we need to say, when are we encouraging learners to talk to each other? So in this degree I've just almost finished, they have this forum at the beginning and it says, please introduce yourself and why you're here. And then all these people go on and post all this sort of like, hi, I'm Claire, I work in a uni. And, you know, that's it. There's no actual other expectation set about when or how I would engage with someone else. And it's sort of, it's very hard to, like, you know, a lot of people find it hard to reach out to other people and cold call and say, would you like, there's also hidden secrets in there. Like, it seemed to me that some people were already in courses together and knew each other. And like, am I just going to barrel on in and say, hey, can you take me on? And so, you know, being a bit bold, I did write on the chat, on the forum, would anyone like to work with me in the group work? I'm a really hard worker, I'm aiming for a high distinction. And, you know, you get a couple back and that's it. That's the extent of learner-learner engagement. And I just think things like, I know group work's hard to assess, another problem, but, you know, things like group work, collaboration, learning communities, discussion forums, and really, you know, getting students to feed back into discussion forums instead of just answering, what do you think the answer is? Don't just ask me, come with a suggestion. And if you're not right, so what? Like, let's move on. So I think that we need to really think about how learners engage with each other. And the third one is how learners engage with content. And this whole content piece has just been taken over by like the 2-hour recorded lecture. That's your content. Off you go and listen to the 2 hours. Well, but, you know, people are now breaking it up into bits and pieces. But, you know, how can we get learners to think about content as the stimulus for their active learning and their responses to it? So are we going to break it up with some questions? Will we give them little bits and then get them to analyse? How are you going to construct that learner content interaction? I'm just going to really quickly talk. I mean, this is just a picture. So all of higher education in Australia is either hot pink, fluoro yellow or fluoro green. I know what you are on your campus, but like, it's just like the architects just all went crazy with those 3 colours. And I think these are some beautiful spaces though. And when we think about the physical space, it's a super hot topic at the moment for me because we're trying to get everyone back. Guess what? They don't want to come back. Students did not want to come back when we opened for like a few months, and they don't want to come back now. We're, you know, having lots of conversations about that topic. But when you think about this, what are we going to do with these spaces? What's the purpose of a physical space? And we know what a good physical space is for students. Configurable space, it's comfortable, that there's spacious classrooms for collaboration, it's informal, there's eddy spaces, they can go and sit by themselves in a corner with a plug and charge their phone and laptop, that it's calming and that it's exciting. So you need like this whole mix of spaces. And it should be designed for teaching as well. Keep your comments up. Loving it. I'm almost done. So I think that, you know, some of the things we've been doing, just to give you a bit of a sort of preview, is we're in Canvas. We've been creating a lot of these workshop activities with things like TED Talks. We have to think about our students in China who can't access some of these materials. So we have to design for different environments. But, you know, getting that real balance between how we can do what's online and what's in person for us is our biggest consideration. We also offer our degrees fully online, so we do know this. In Intelligent Enterprise System, we're using an avatar and we have a chatbot. So this is quite interesting, this chatbot we've built. So commercial law, we're a big uni. There's 91,000 students at RMIT. So this subject is like 800 students, and 800 students saying, when is the assessment date? So this is a chatbot that just has been preloaded. So it's got AI in it that behind the scenes. So it's preloaded, and the just frequently asked questions are answered by the chatbot. And as more students feed into the chatbot, it gets more and more intelligent. Some good ones in the sector. I think Deacon's got a brilliant one with Deakin Genie. It's getting very sophisticated in terms of the engine behind it. You know, I just think in terms of tech, there's just so much happening in this space. It's a bit of an interest of mine. And when you think about the interactive learning and the possibilities of AR, I know how hard it is to scale. It's super hard. I don't know how to do it at my uni. I've got 36,000 students in my one course. Like, it's enormous. But there's some really interesting things happening in that space, and things like this particular technology. I hope no one's squeamish, that's not too bad, but this one's got 1,000 operations on it, touch surgery. It's all heavily researched in terms of forming the neural pathways for learners to actually think about the steps involved in a surgery. And so if you need to perform a knee operation, you've never done it before, and you go through this 4 times, you'll actually be pretty proficient without actually holding a scalpel. And some of the things happening with tech at the moment, I've got a picture of it here. See these little haptic gloves? These are actually now like replicating what it's like to hold a scalpel and cut. So it's getting like, these haptic gloves have little blisters in the fingers, and they expand and they decrease. So you can actually mimic touch, which is really interesting. This one's just a little app, like a virtual heart. So it's your heart and it's beating in AR and augmented reality, so mixed reality view. And you can see, you can download it. So it's fantastic fun to see your own heart beating, and I think you can give yourself a stroke if you want. I mean, it's quite interesting the way that technology can integrate, but we don't want to take away from the absolute key fundamentals of learning. And I just thought, I'll just show you where this is all heading, is things like the Neuralink. This is a chip they've created that goes in your brain. This is actually a robot they've created specifically to implant the chip in your brain that allows you to control mobile devices by thinking about the controls. And, you know, this is sort of, I know it sounds science fiction, this is real, seriously real technology at the moment. So it's sort of out, I'm just going to conclude by coming back, way back to fundamentals. And, you know, this is one thing, is just your front door of your online space is, I don't know if, you know, just take that student's eyes and put it onto what you've got. And when you go into these environments, It's so hard. It's really, really hard. You need to have a welcoming environment. You need clear navigation and so when I went in, I'm a professional higher education person, I'm on a job, right? In an LMS, panicking like inside, thinking I'm hopeless. I don't know, imposter syndrome. I have no idea what I'm doing. And, I'm clicking on stuff thinking I should be able to figure this out. Why put this on me? Like, say hello, welcome. I'm glad you made it here. Like, a friendly face does so much. And we know from the research that having a face of video welcome is going to help people engage in those environments. Do you know how many links I've clicked on that just don't work? Like, it is so frustrating as a learner to click on a dead link. It's like, oh, so frustrating. And then the favorite of LMS worlds for online learning is just don't give you everything. Can you just please read these 4,560 pages by next Tuesday? Thank you very much. And here's all the 70 questions that you could potentially answer if you've got some spare time. Like, what do I need to look at? I'm here, I'm in good faith wanting to learn. What is the one that's most important? And if it so happens that my, 3 kids are not available on Saturday night, maybe I'll do the rest of it. But, it's sort of that thinking. What's the forum? What is your expectation of forums? Like, just say it at the beginning. I want everyone to answer each other's questions. And if you're wrong, I'll highlight where that issue is. And I've done big classes. I used to teach 1,000 students as a go. You need people to help you in those forums, or you just, this one response and one answer thing, it's very hard on you as an academic teaching. Assessment you can find. Like, this sounds really simple, but trust me, you're in there going, where's the assessment? First thing you look at, where's the assessment? Can't even find, what's it worth? Is it 10%? And then my favorite, you do the assessment, I'm super early. And then the lecturer changed the assessment. And I was like, don't change the assessment right now. I've done the assessment. So assessment's obviously super important. And I said accessible before. We do need accessibility. Technological daycare for mummies. That's awesome, Barbara. And then just things like, do I need to listen to all of these lectures? So hours and hours, what am I meant to do with it? Can you give me different formats that I can download? Like, do I have to go through each one? What am I expected to do? Where do I go? Where can I get support? Stuff like that. And just 2 more slides is, and just don't forget the purpose of engagement. I think, the point of getting together is to have a chat. So help students understand what you're wanting to do. This is a great book by Jose Bowen about teaching naked, which is not about teaching naked. It's about saying sometimes when you come together, just let all that tech and everything get out of the way and just have that conversation, because we're social beings. And finally, this is, I just love this article. I've linked it here. I'll send you this through. But Nielsen and Ludwicker have gone through the 25 learning principles from cognitive science. I just think you sort of know this, you guys will know this already, but we know that, students will learn better when they engage in activity rather than passively watch it. And thinking about the meaning and importance of new materials and connecting it to their prior knowledge and belief systems and mental models. And when you've got stories that you can connect it to that are easy to understand, that's going to help students learn. And there is a thing of cognitive load. Sometimes just that's way too much, we'll just stop. We put all this together in a lovely model, which we've called the College of Business and Law model for us, for our new degree. And I just thought, we really went hard at active, authentic and blended. And that's our mantra for our courses. These are huge. We've got 180 separate subjects in this degree. So, it's a mega degree. It's got 27 majors, 50 minors. It's a really big one. And we've just redesigned the whole thing from the whole degree has been redesigned from scratch in terms of interactive pedagogy and thinking about blended. We've had some amazing principles around learner, teacher, learner industry, and thinking about authentic and blended learning. So we don't have lectures, we don't have exams, but we have other things instead. So that's it from me. I just sort of hope today that you sort of have seen this big snapshot of what's happening in the sector. And I just am so excited about the future of education. We're in the absolute best sector on the planet because we help people learn. And I think we need to keep going back to that purpose of education, that we have to have amazing programs or courses for the sorts of knowledge and skills and competencies that learners need for their future, whatever that is. So they're motivated by different things. And we can't just teach for a particular job all the time. We have to think broader than that in terms of skills. We have to help learners really love learning and make it easy just to get in, because it's hard to learn. So let's not put barriers in the way. And I think we need to have this amazing culture in terms of not just, creating a capable professional, but someone who can actually learn and be ethically centered and sensitive individuals and critical citizens and part of society. And so that people can really debate issues in the world and be a part of it. And I think that's a sort of future for higher education that's super exciting for me. So thank you so much. I can't wait to stop sharing and I get to see you in a bit more detail. And I hope you found that interesting. And I think I've got time for some questions.
Claire, thank you so much. I'm just sitting here smiling, and those of you who know me well will know that, these are the things we need to be passionate about. I'm just so thrilled with everything that you've said and with the comments in the chat. You've obviously touched points with lots and lots of people, and we've had collaboration there in sharing, here's how to find this and here's what you might want to read. So thank you so much for beginning our conference in this way. We have got a little bit of time for questions. I know that Claire has to Zoom off somewhere else in a moment. The problem with Zoom is we say yes to lots of things because we just have to click a button. But I've sort of been scanning through the chat and there's a lot of comments. There's not a lot of questions, although I can see one that's just come in from Jackie. So many of the things you spoke about are actually about inclusive and accessible approaches to subject design. How does RMIT approach this?
Yeah, great one, Jackie. I'm sure you could answer that too. So I'd love to know what you guys are doing. What we're doing is that accessible design is baked in from day one. Like, it's not an add-on. And I've been in lots of unis where it is an add-on. But an academic would say, I don't have anyone with a disability in my class, so I don't need to design that way. It's like, no, that's not the point. Like, the point is that it should be accessible for everyone. So in our redesign, we just redesigned 180 courses this year. My team is exhausted. They just need to go to bed for like all of summer. And in the design process, we immediately think about how do we have this in multiple formats. Accessibility is also, our students in other countries can't always access internet at high speed, and they can't access some of the platforms that we're on. So we either just avoid the platform altogether and then we find an alternative, or we have a system that you can download the resources so that even low bandwidth can be accessible. And the LMS itself does a lot in terms of different formats, but I think there's better LMSs in terms of accessibility as well. I think Canvas got a little bit more to do, to be honest, but other ones have got really good multiple formats that is not in our instance of Canvas at the moment, but we have made it a deliberate design decision.
Thank you, Claire. A couple of other questions now, one from earlier. Louise, your comment, she has a burning question about balancing providing content in different ways and potential confusion for students in a totally online teaching situation. So that balance between offering for everybody but potential confusion. Louise, I don't know, I hope I've represented that properly. And Claire, do you have an answer? Or
yeah, Louise, why don't you come up? I see you on the screen. Speak.
Hi, Claire. How are you? Thanks for your great talk. My school, we've been in distance education since the 70s. We used to mail out our notes. We're the library school. So student confusion, you give them lots of choices for content. Some of them love it. Some of them are completely lost. Do you have experience with this problem in your design process?
I do. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. And I think that, I started in distance education too. I was at Deakin and we got the cassette tapes on the Walkman to listen to. And I tell you, the law lecturers, in the 90s was so boring. Like you couldn't speed it up on a Sony Walkman back then. You just have to listen to hours and hours, civil procedure, talking, reading from the textbook on a tape. So yes, totally agree. I think that, you know, from a design perspective, we should be saying this is the absolute critical things that you must read for this. And I think we don't ask students to read enough, by the way. We're getting them all to listen to stuff all the time. Like, let's get them back to reading. We don't have to give them journal articles of 1,000 pages. Say, just read this bit. This is so critical for you to know it. So I think you need to separate out the really essential from the recommended. And if you can annotate it, I mean, libraries do an amazing job today. They're just incredible. But, you know, annotating and saying, this one's useful for you to understand X. Take you 2 minutes to go down your list of resources and say, you don't need to read this one, but if you do, you'd find this concept really interesting. And then obviously assessment's going to drive everything, right? So if you want to assess it, you're going to have to put it, if you want to test it, you're going to have to put it in the assessment. So you have to make sure that you're fair to students who didn't read the bits that you didn't, you know, don't hide your sort of materials in those recommended. I'm sure you wouldn't anyway, but it's sort of, you know, it's frustrating for learners to get to an assessment and find that they've only had 10% of the entire course tested and that there's all this other stuff on there that was irrelevant. Some learners, though, will want that extra stuff. They'll want to engage because they're super interested. And some of them will download all that stuff for later. Like they'll say, oh, I don't need it right now. Maybe they'll go back to it in a few years. So, yeah, I think you should separate out. But have you got any ideas too?
Me personally, ideas with that? No, it's a real live question for me. Like, and I take that approach you're describing through the mini lectures that I send them, but I'm trying to work out ways of spending my effort live rather than spending my effort recorded and then recording my live so the asynchronous learners can access it. But that's quite a head shift to get your head around how to do that efficiently and survive the teaching load. So that's the kind of elephant in the room for me, is the teaching load.
Yeah, like every higher education institution in Australia says the same thing. But I mean, what about, like, let's go completely left field. What about co-creation of content with students? Like, let's get them to start to analyse the things that is useful for learning. That's like pretty way out there. Yeah. And it's also an abrogation of where identity in terms of your role is. But yeah. I think that it's sort of saying, you know, open a forum and say, you analyse these readings too and tell us which ones you didn't like or didn't understand. Some readings are so complex, like you can't understand. It's like, why use those words? No one uses these normal words in any conversation ever. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think acknowledging that, but saying if you plough through that, by the time you get to page 5, you might find that super interesting. Mm-hmm. So I think explaining is a big key to it.
Yeah, your co-creation idea is awesome. You have to, need to find colleagues with experience. Contact me.
Yes, there you are. Louise would like to be contacted. I tell you what I did once, pretty bold. When I was a law lecturer, I said, I don't care how you show me that you understand the program learning outcomes, but I want you to demonstrate to me that you understand the program learning outcome for law. Like law, it's not traditionally this open. So it was a controversial issue that was before the Parliament, and I got like letters written to that actually posted to the Parliament about the legislation. Imagine right now as Victoria and the pandemic legislation, be just pages coming in from the university. You know, I got a whole lot of different things, but the best I got a cushion, an embroidered cushion. And it was sort of representing society with an essay attached to it, because I made it clear you can't just, you know, you have to be serious about explaining how you understand the learning outcomes. And I just think, wow, I never would have thought of a cushion as assessment. I would tell you what, I've never had such engagement with learners in my whole life when they had to look at the learning outcomes and work out how to demonstrate that they understood them. Yeah, just mind-blowing. And they were so creative, and I keep in contact with them actually now. It's a fantastic group.
Thank you, Claire. What a wonderful answer. Christine, we'll take your question, then I have one from Caroline Robinson in the chat.
Hi, Claire. Just love the presentation, and I love to hear what you guys are doing and how you're moving forward, especially with the blend and the large classrooms, because I find that a real challenge. My question is, what have you found the most effective at getting instructions to the majority, not all, because you never get all learners most effectively? Because each year are continually putting cross-references and linkages and direction notes and navigation to students in more and more places, because I just find they dive into materials. They've kind of got the Google search mentality of doing assessments. And they open up your site and they say, well, what do I need to do the assessment? And if you don't have really clear navigations, I mean, to start off with, I had the beginning and end of my lecture recordings. Well, people didn't do lecture recordings. Okay, so then I had written instructions with the lecture recordings, and then I have it on the landing page, and then I have it here. And I'm just like going, you know, and so if you then change one, you've got to change all of them. So you've got to keep a really clear note to self. Instructions are in all of these places, and if I'm going to change any one instruction at any time, I've got to update all of these and tick off each week, each time, because I'm getting a little confused at how to keep it all sorted. Do you know what I mean? Have you got some tricks for us to how to, because I'm finding it really hard with these big classes. They just seem to dive in at really strange places.
Yeah, well, awesome. And I just got to say one thing, which, you know, over my career, I've had people disagree with this. So I don't care if you disagree, but I think we need to set the expectation with students that we set the conditions for learning engagement. That was said to me by Professor Sally Kiff when I was 22 years old, by the way. And because I used to beat myself, I was like, why am I'm doing everything. I've got this, you know, I spend hours, and I used to think, why aren't they engaging? And as soon as she said that, I was like, right. So my job is to set the best conditions for learning engagement, and it's up to the learner to come forward. And that's just one thing that I'd just say first. But then with your learning engagement, I think first is just get someone completely outside, like non-higher education person, and just say, does this make sense to you? Like if you come in here, does this make sense to you? And I think, so, you know, my husband's a great litmus. He's a lawyer, so he's very, like, you know, ordered in his thinking. And you go, nah, I don't know what you're talking about there. And I just think once you've set it up and it's clean and clear, and you've said you need to do this and you need to do that, and explain it to students, say, you know, I'm doing it this way because I need you to progress through in these particular, explain what you're doing. I think you've done a great job. It sounds like you're doing a great job already. But just things like video, I just think the whole sector, we've got academics in bedrooms across Australia recording everything, in little Zoom recording computers, and all the students are listening at 2 times the speed. Why? Like, do we seriously have everything recorded? We have it too. I've got so many recordings still. And I think we have to think about, what is it that we're trying to get the students to do when they come to learn with us? You know, what is their expectation? Hope that helps. Probably doesn't, but anyway, I hope you found it amusing anyway.
Claire, thank you. Look, the last question, because I think it's quite a good one to finish on. How do we convince senior leadership that students are not customers?
Oh, look, just tell them. Your Vice Chancellor looks really good, by the way. I like her. I mean, we can't have this. We cannot have students as customers. I gave a podcast once, and you know, I just gave the analogy that you might like to have the hottest body on the planet. You know, you might like the magazine, look at it, and he's like, I would love this hot body. It would be amazing. But unless you work for it, you're not getting it. Like, unless you put in the hours, you're not getting it. And this is what learning is. Learning is a change in your brain. Like, it is chemical transformation that actually pushes you out of your comfort zone, where you're learning new things, and you can't do that if you think you're a customer. And I mean, I just can't stress it enough. This CX mentality is being confused with engagement, and being confused with, you know, clear expectations and good teaching practice. Yeah, okay, the student is a customer if they come into your environment and they're a patient of the medical centre, yes. But they're not in other circumstances. They're not when it comes to learning. Am I passionate enough? I've got a whole article. If you're interested, I've written a whole paper on this from the legal perspective of why they're not customers for universities. And students who sue us in institutions, which happens, you know, their grievance is hardly ever related to the academic pursuit. It's something else that's happened. Yeah. So super passionate about that one.
Claire, thank you so much. There's so much there for us to pick up and run with, and so many comments in the chat that, you know, we can explore further. So thank you to everybody as well for contributing to the discussion going on while we're listening to Claire. But you've really given us insight, you've given us inspiration, and you've made it all seem possible, which I just think is wonderful. And as I said before, the smile on my face is about where we can go now, having been kicked off by your thinking. So thank you so much for being part of our conference and for leaving us such inspirational start for the rest of our presentations. I know you have to Zoom off, so Zoom off happily.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be here today, and I hope you enjoyed the engagement, and look forward to catching up soon. I'll see you later.